requirements have changed and put them in this sort of awkward position, so we're going to try to make the best of it. That's kind of where we are.
Thank you.
Okay? All right. So now.
Mr. President.
Yes, sir.
Before we continue, I just want to make sure, I recognized someone out in the crowd tonight, just to want to make sure that if they wanted to speak up, public comment, if they
Sure.
didn't know they were to write that down. But I don't want to call said individual out, but they're running for office later this year, and I see him sitting back there, so I didn't know if he wanted to say anything or not.
I asked that same question earlier, and the individual declined.
Okay, sorry. I won't mention your name then.
And there we go. Okay. So we now turn to our consent agenda. We have nothing there, so now we turn to our treasurer's report. The treasurer is not here. Would it be okay if staff were to drive the bus on this one?
Sure, I'll give it my best go.
We're on page 18 of 48.
All right. This is the cash activity report as of March 28th, 2018. The cash balance March 1st of 2018, $5,375,493. The operating balance going forward is $5,298,146. The check dates are February 28th through March 27th, and you'll see your top 10 checks that were issued for that month.
Okay, are there any questions for staff related to this item? No? Okay. Thank you. We now move forward. And that was read by staff as a result of Commissioner Blanchard not being here with us this evening. Okay, we now turn to the Planning Commission report.
We don't have one. We didn't have a meeting last month.
Okay, all right.
I don't think we did. Next month, right?
You forgot. No, we didn't have one.
It's April.
Okay.
I thought maybe I missed one here and there in between. I tend to do that sometimes.
We now turn to our agenda items. The first agenda item related to the Frederick County Harm Reduction and Syringe Service Programs has been postponed to the May 7th, 2018 town meeting pending our approval. So I now turn to agenda item number 2, and this relates to update to parking policy and ordinances for discussion.
Right, this is for discussion only.
Yes, ma'am.
I will be seeking Ms. Nail's input during this presentation, as she's been your code enforcement, parking enforcement officer for 13 years. So a lot of this is based on her experience and what she deals with on a day-to-day basis, as well as research. She conducted research on about 30 municipalities on what their parking policies and their ordinances are as well. A little history. Your parking citation rates were set in 1999 and have not changed to any degree since 1999. In 2004, you raised the current parking meter rates to 25 cents per hour. So for 1 hour, it's a quarter, and 10 cents for 15 minutes. So we can just go through each policy, or either policy or ordinance, however you'd like. For your convenience, we attached, the first one would be policy 18-03 that deals with parking violation fines and parking permit fees. We have also attached, that you'll see on page 20, is the previous policy that was adopted in 2003. So for 1803, there's only a couple of changes. For overtime parking, your current fine for overtime metered parking is $5. Staff recommends raising that to $10. Again, that was set in 1999, so almost 20 years it hasn't been raised, and the expenses have continued to increase. As you'll see, that's about the only one that we recommended increasing. And then after 20 days, raising it from $20 to $25. You know, part of your meters is to encourage people to visit your businesses and move on, and encourage them to put the money in the meters and pay the meter, and not, you know, just sit their vehicles there. The rest of them have stayed the same. We changed parked blocking to street, not highway, because none of our street, you know, we don't have any highways. We added, which had already been permitted by previous policy, the 1999 policy, which allowed fines for snow emergency route parking, which is already in your code. We just included it on the policy. It is already set at a $25 fine and a $35 after 20 days. The left side parking is set at $15, and after 20 days, it's a $30. And then parking for 48 consecutive hours is for a $15 fine, and after 20 days, it's a $30 fine. Currently in our code, we fine after 24 consecutive hours. In discussions with Ms. Nail and the difficulties in dealing with cars that are only parked for 24 hours, it's easier to move it up to 48 hours as far as being able to know if the vehicles have moved. And then the other section, parking permit and parking sign charges. To rent a daily sign to reserve that spot for an entire day, increase that from $2 a day to $5 a day. The 6-month permit has always been $115 since 2004. However, it was never changed on the policy. And to encourage, and that helps to encourage people maybe to get a 6-month pass instead of a 3-month pass, and raising the 3-month from $50 to $60. And that is policy 18-03. We just want to keep moving on. We want to discuss.
Anybody want to discuss this, or do you want to hold on and move forward? Any preference of the board?
Hold on, move forward on what? Just additional policies here? The rest
There's several
Yes.
policies and ordinances.
Just gonna go through all of it and then.
It's up, however the board wants to move forward.
So Commissioner Ritz, you want to keep moving? Is that what you're saying?
I'm fine with moving on.
Okay. Commissioner Buckman?
Well, I was just wondering, how did we come up with going from 75 to 115?
Because it was approved in 2004, it was never changed.
Oh, okay.
I have the minutes from 2004
Okay.
that approved the change, and unfortunately just never made it onto the policy.
Commissioner Sweeney, you okay if we take it as a whole?
Yes.
Okay.
Next one would be on page 2448 is the parking meter reservation policy. That would replace policy 2002-02, which is also in your packet for you to look at. The only change that we added would be number 3, all parking meter reserve sign rentals require a minimum of 24-hour notice or they'll be denied. We frequently have people coming in at 4:25 on a Friday wanting something posted on a Saturday, which then incurs staff overtime. You have to print the signs because we don't have the bags anymore. We have to print the signs and write the information on it and go up and put it. That encourages people to plan out when they would need a spot, and again, cut down on staff overtime. Number 6 was each reserved parking meter is $5 per day, Monday through Sunday. And that's just an increase from $2 to $5, again, for part of it is for staff time and overtime that's incurred, as well as the printing. That's policy 1805. That's all that changed on that one. Keep moving forward.
Yes, please.
Okay. Ordinance 1803 simply addresses definitions that may or may not be found in the code. We added definitions that might be forthcoming that would be added at a future date. So we added a definition. I should have started at the beginning. John Clapp has reviewed all these. He has looked at them. He gave a little bit of input. They've been, the changes that he recommended were made. So anyway, On this one, the definitions, we added the definition of a bus. Do you want me to read all the definitions?
I don't,
Do you guys think we need that? Or, I mean, my hope is everyone's
I've already
pre-read
read
on
it.
the
Yeah.
technical side. I think we're okay.
Yes, thank you.
Does anybody have any specific questions related to terms, though?
we're gonna go over this stuff at the end, right? Because it's
Yes.
not about really
Yes.
terms, it's addition, okay, go ahead.
Yes.
So we added the definition for bus. We added a definition for emergency vehicle. We clarified the definition of a motor vehicle. That definition is per the Maryland Transportation article. All these definitions are. The definition of a motorcycle, a passenger vehicle. We felt it appropriate to add the plug-in electric drive vehicle because they are becoming popular. The definition of that, the definition of a truck, a vehicle, and we struck out animal or driving any animal drawing a vehicle. So we took that out.
Still in the charter, though.
Well, baby steps. There's a lot of things in the charter.
We're relying on
That-
Comar there, I guess, or,
Yeah,
okay.
those are the definitions.
Okay.
Excuse me. The next ordinance, 1804, addresses basically what what your responsibilities are for parking and what things are not allowed or prohibited as related to parking. No person shall stand or park a vehicle on any public street or public right-of-way of town in the following conditions. And if I went back and looked through, I believe 1 through 9 were already included in some fashion or another. So you can't park on a sidewalk or straddling a curb. Driveway entrances in front of a private driveway which provides access to a public street. Private or public driveways, a person may not stop, stand, or park a vehicle partially in a private or public driveway and partially into the roadway. Vehicles must not extend the property line of the driveway into the roadway. Fire hydrant, you can't park within 15 feet of a fire hydrant. You can't park within 20 feet of a crosswalk. 25 feet of a stop sign, 20 feet of an intersection. Can't park anywhere where signs prohibit parking. You can't park in a handicap space, in a space marked as restricted for the use of handicap unless displaying a handicap license plate or placard. You can't park in a fire lane. Can't park on a bridge. Double parking, a person may not stand or park a vehicle on the roadway side or any other vehicle that is stopped or parked at the edge of a curb or driveway. You can't park other than within the lines or markings on the street or on a town parking lot for the purpose of the designation parking space. Parking on the street for a period of 48 consecutive hours without being moved a full vehicle length. That's already in the code. We just changed it from 24 to 48. In any designated parking space with an adjacent parking meter if the time designation on that meter shows that the time is expired. Basically can't park at an expired meter. That's already in the code. In violation of a valid sign that limits or restricts parking based on a designated length of time, time of day, and or days of the week. There are a few signs in town that restrict parking on only particular times or days. No left side parking. And parking during a snow emergency in violation of section 10.12.120. The next section, 10.2.12020, inoperable and unattended vehicles. Basically, any vehicle that is inoperable and is left unattended on a public street or public property for more than 48 hours and is not displaying currently valid registration plates or is displaying registration plates of another vehicle, is disabled or inoperable, and it continues on, dismantled, partially dismantled. That's in our code, and that's also in the transportation article as well. And then all that 10.12030, everything was struck out of there. And then we added 10.12030, repair work performed on vehicles. It is unlawful to perform any repair or work of any nature on a vehicle except that of an emergency or minor nature, such as changing of a flat tire, replacing a battery, while said vehicle is parked or located on a street, avenue, way, alley, town parking lot, or any part of a public right-of-way within the municipal limits of the town of Emmitsburg. A violation of this section shall be a municipal infraction punishable by a citation of $30. Basically, if your car is not operable, it's up on blocks, you've got missing tire, broken windshields, it can't be parked in these areas. Parallel parking, we just added some words to parallel parking. There was no change to the content. 10.12.090, 2-hour parking is unlawful for any person except persons to whom parking permits and parking signs have been granted to place, stand, or park any motor vehicle or other conveyance for more than 2 hours anytime on the following streets. East and West Main Street, this is all in there. We took out Federal Street and Broad Alley. No change to the rest. Again, 48 hours instead of the 24 hours for leaving your vehicle on the roadway.
Now, I don't know that, let me ask the board, do we need to hear all these read to us, or are we okay? I mean, this is for, sorry,
It's for discussion.
for discussion, but not for consideration
No, I
for
mean,
a vote. Okay.
I don't think, there's like two things that are jumping out at me that I would like to address. However,
Okay.
I say we just keep going. I mean, I know I
Okay.
have it marked where
I'll point out then the important things without reading through everything.
Okay,
It's
n-
better
now-
for me anyway.
And I'll throw this back on the board. When we see this again, my assumption is everyone's read this for significant detail. And I think, we have that expectation of one another, and that's reasonable. We're okay with that?
Yes, because the whole purpose tonight is if we all come to a consensus, provide staff guidance to modify it, and then it comes back for vote, right?
Correct.
It would come back for a vote, but also at that time, if we see something that we're not comfortable with that we didn't see tonight, we can also
Yeah.
dig in on it at that
That
time
happens.
also.
That
Correct.
happens.
Is
Yeah,
that okay?
That's
Everybody's-
cool. Yeah, I'm fine
Okay.
with that.
Okay, that works for me. In B, you'll see that again, it's all laid out, all the different citation, or all the different violations. What is added here is straddling occur every 24 hours in violation of this section counts as a separate offense and may be fined accordingly. Per John Clapp, each one has to state that, so that you can, if a car continues to sit there for more than 24 hours over a expired meter or parked next to a fire hydrant, they will continue to receive citations. Instead of just one citation, it's considered one offense. And then letter D just lays out how you can pay for if you were to receive a citation, how they are paid for.
Do we have an online means for
Yes,
someone to do
but
this?
they could pay by credit card on the website.
Okay, do we have that listed, though? I don't mean to be too technical, but,
I mean, we don't encourage it on the website because it's mostly set up for water and sewer bill paying. We encourage the credit card machine here at the office, or I know a lot of them call Amy, and Amy runs their credit card through the machine here at the office.
okay. Would it save time for staff, do you think,
To use the website?
to use the website to make the payment? I mean, do we get an extra charge from the?
There is
credit
the
card
set,
companies, is that the issue?
there is a set percentage. I think it's 2%, something like that, to use the website.
Okay.
The problem being is that it might be more difficult because it comes in the website for the accounting tech to find it, because she's only usually looking for water and sewer bill payments. So I would try to just encourage people to use the other methods available.
Okay.
We are looking, I mean, and if you recall, when we did bring the credit card online to you, that they did have other modules, and we could build on it, that if we chose to build on it, that would be a better way to go about it.
Sure, okay. Thank you.
1805, ordinance 1805. This one's basically just is some language changes, adding a parking enforcement officer behind the police officer. We capitalize Community Heritage Day. Here, the violations and penalties for 1 and 2, the changes from the expired meter from $10 to $15, and then
What page are we on?
where am I at?
38 to 48.
I'm on 39 now.
Oh, okay.
Page
sorry.
39, at the top of the page. Failure to park in between the lines, $15. And then the overtime parking, $10. And we cite policy 1803 where everything is referred to. Oh, that's not it. These have probably, I believe Ms. Nail's been working on these for the better part of 6 months, so this has been a long time coming. 1806, ordinance 1806 is page 60. Again, just some word changes. We don't have an Emmitsburg Department of Police. We changed that to officer. Parking enforcement officer. Struck out chief of police to make it the town manager. The same thing on page 41 of 48. Just again, a language change on sale of unclaimed vehicles. And that's all those.
Okay. All right, so turning back to the board, Mr. Ritz, you said there were a couple things that had gotten your attention.
Yes.
And if you could share maybe, if you can, a page number when we talk about it, that might be,
These two go hand in hand. Which is easier to say the page number first. Page 30 of 48.
okay?
30.
30, 30. So this would be ordinance 1804. No persons shall stand or park a vehicle, ... Number 6, stop sign, within 25 feet of a stop sign. There's going to be a lot of issue with that if we put that in, because this was,
That's it's a Maryland transportation article.
well,
And Maryland transportation, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
there are a lot of violations currently in Northgate.
Yes. It's a Maryland transportation code and that supersedes ours. So that's why it's included in there. It's a sight thing. It becomes very dangerous when these cars, you see some of them that are parked right up on a stop sign. So we're just doing it to be in conjunction with the Maryland transportation article.
Since the deputy's in the room, have you ticketed anyone for being in violation of Maryland law in proximity to a stop sign?
I have not personally done any ticket anybody for the stop sign.
And now
no.
you will, because we have an ordinance in effect?
I'll look for it. Yeah, yeah,
But it's something he could
mean,
have been doing all along.
yeah.
You're going to have a lot of individuals coming into your office. And I know you're just going to say, well, it's a Maryland law. Well, you never did it before, so why are we doing it now?
Because it should have been done all along. It should have. It's a hazard. It can be dangerous. You park in front of these stop signs. You have kids riding their bikes. You have people walking.
And that's why we need public parking in this town.
Well, that's
Here's a good
another
example
topic.
of why Commissioner Ritz really, really wants parking areas.
Mr. Ritz, I'll give you an example where someone approached me about this specific issue related to parking close to an intersection. It's one of the alleys, no, it's
Forward that to.
it's by the laundromat where an individual had pulled onto Main Street and was T-boned. The reason they felt they could not see was because a car was parked too close to the intersection. So the line of sight issue was a concern to them. Now, it's not the direct stop sign thing that we're talking about here, but it's the fact that until the sidewalk project is done, the markings for no parking on the curb aren't going to be in place. So it's a similar circumstance where if you're not far enough back It is a safety issue. And people
Actually-
will be mad, but their safety is a priority.
Actually, no, it's apples and oranges. I'm talking about a development wherein there's hardly any traffic and it's not a major thoroughfare.
Well,
It's
you
not
can't
s-
predict the traffic, though.
It's not, well, it's,
I mean, there will be traffic regardless at any,
yeah,
at any
once
given
we have
intersection.
the second entrance to Northgate finally completed, but, you know, there's dead-end streets up there, too. I just find it odd that we're adding it now to an ordinance.
Well, it is the state law. I mean,
Well,
that's,
there's a lot of state laws that aren't in our ordinances either.
I understand, but
And there are a lot of ordinances that we have that have nothing to do with state laws that I think are above and beyond what really need to be going on in town.
well, I think here's where I'm coming from. No, I don't blindly follow every law if that's what your subtext is. But the piece is, in this case, it is a safety issue. If your line of sight is impaired in a vehicle because there's a vehicle too close to a stop sign, that puts you in harm's way. And, you know, I understand what you're saying about higher traffic areas versus lower traffic areas, but traffic, there is traffic. And one can't predict the traffic, and therefore...
I totally agree with you. And
Okay,
I'm not,
okay.
I understand the safety. What is the point of putting it in the ordinance? If we're just going to say what's common sense and it's
And it's state
and
law.
it's state law, then what's the point of even putting it in there?
Good point.
So our,
I think there's an over abundance of verbiage in this one particular ordinance. No offense to who wrote it. I'm just saying it's a lot of material.
If it's already state law, why do we need it in our,
so your code enforcement officer can enforce it. She can enforce state law. We receive
If you-
complaints in here, and if we don't have it in our code,
Sure.
then she can't enforce it.
It gives her the authority to act on it.
give a warning and tell them, please stay back from the stop sign before I ever give a citation.
And to me, that makes sense in town. You're probably in, like, village zone. You know, I'm referring to some more desolate areas where there's hardly any traffic, and there's really no limited parking for the homeowners to begin with.
There is or is not.
Not.
See much problem in Northgate.
Then why park near a stop sign?
They all got driveways and stuff, so.
A lot of it in the alleys.
Smaller driveways.
In those areas.
Yeah, I think the alleys are the issue.
Oh yeah, no, well, I mean that makes sense. So to me, it's almost like a common sense issue. Why do we even need to put it in there? Yes, it's state law, but
Well, we would,
Common sense isn't common.
but then again, you know, the areas that okay, maybe individuals were parking close to a stop sign, and now they're going to be enforced, and now they're going to be fined. It's why are you picking on me? I've been here 20 years. I've been here 10 years, and I've never heard of this before. No one's ever said anything to me now. Now all of a sudden, the town's coming after me. Why are they doing that? I'm just saying. I'm throwing it out there. When it's all said and done, we all vote on it. I'm just voicing my concern of putting it in there. I'm also voicing concern regarding page 32 of 48.
Which
Okay.
one?
32 of 48. Repair work performed on vehicles. It's unlawful to perform any repair work on any nature on any vehicle except that of emergency or minor nature, such as changing of a flat tire or the replacing of a battery. Why are we limiting ourselves to just a flat tire battery?
Well, it's for example, we just recently received a complaint from somebody on West Main Street on somebody that had their car parked in front of their residence while they were doing work on it, and the tire was up on
Along Main Street?
Main Street.
Okay.
We're limiting to that so it's work that can be quickly done. You don't want somebody restoring a car, rehabbing a car on
it's happening in Silo Hill too.
Main Street, on
Silo Hill and Silo Hill Lane.
the roadways. There's debris when you do work to the cars. Oil leak, gas leak, and things like that. They do run off onto our streets. They run into our stormwater.
How much
can't-
time are we giving him to perform this minor work?
It's 48 hours. 48 hours. That's how long a car can sit there.
I don't see that in that paragraph.
What's in the, where we put it under the inoperable vehicles? On, which page
That's
is
a little
that?
different than,
On page
work.
31.
Mr. Ritz, would you want to
Falls
add,
under the same.
would you want to add 48 hours to this? Would that seem,
So if you look at page 31, any
Well,
motor
hold on.
vehicle that's inoperable, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Ritz, would adding the 48-hour limit to this add clarity for you, to your satisfaction?
I mean, for all intents and purposes, I guess it is an inoperable vehicle for that short period of time you're working on it.
Right.
When I think of an inoperable vehicle, I think of like, your stereotypical vehicle up on blocks. Or with the license plate off. Okay, I see it says 48 hours in that paragraph, but I'm not seeing it there. So,
It can be added.
yeah, if we say it is unlawful to perform any repairs that take longer than 48 hours.
Right, it can be, that definitely
Okay.
can be added.
Commissioners, are we okay with that? Okay, so, sorry, Mr. Ritz, are you okay with that?
yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to nitpick here either. I'm just,
No, you're advocating for what you feel is right, absolutely.
it's.
Yeah, that's good, Jeff.
Mr. Ritz, Mr. Ritz,
I'm still reading the paragraph. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. President.
you're,
I was reading ahead there.
you're standing on good ground. You're doing the right thing, fear not.
It's also a safety issue. If you're working on your car on the side, you see them on the side of the road at 15 or wherever, and the hazards, you're crawling underneath your vehicle, you're trying to fix it, you're parked on the side of the road. It's also dangerous. I mean, that's not part of this ordinance, but thinking of it from that standpoint too,
Well-
we don't want to encourage people to be doing work on the side of the road when, as we just talked about, George and Sons and the tractor trailers are coming flying through towns and cars are coming flying through town. Our roads are narrow anyway, and you've got somebody laying underneath the vehicle or they've got their tools laying everywhere. We
Well,
don't want to
again,
encourage
yeah.
it. So if we give them 48 hours to get the thing done and off the road.
It's
Or
again,
fixed.
it's common sense. I mean, I grew up on Main Street too, and I would never do anything on my car while I wouldn't park along Main Street
I
to
had
do
no
it.
choice.
I mean,
I would actually
common
illegally
sense-
pull in the pool parking lot and do it because it was right in our backyard. But
If everybody
That
lived
was-
by common sense,
was
we
years
wouldn't
ago.
need half the stuff that we do, unfortunately. But I do understand what you're saying, and we can definitely add the 48 hours to it.
Any other items, sir? Mr. Ritz, anything else?
that was really all that jumped out at me. I mean, there was another reference to the parking, the stop sign again under page 34.
Right.
And I know a lot of these were already in there.
Exactly.
Above it, and they were just reworded. Now it's
A lot of it's
again, it
been
was the stop sign. It just jumped out at me again that the stop
a lot
sign.
of things have been reworded and written so it's easier to understand and broken out because a lot of it was just lumped in paragraphs.
Okay, did Mr. Clapp, when he went through this, granted we're discussing the addition of the stop sign, even though I said that, did he look through to make sure that these ordinances are covering everything under MVA rules, laws? Okay.
No. He looked at what we had proposed and what we as a town felt was probably what Ms. Nail had dealt with most frequently. That's what we were trying to address. We
So-
weren't trying to add things that weren't necessary. Because there's a lot more you could add, but
I mean, if we're
wasn't
going
necessary.
that way to make sure that we're covering Maryland law in here,
Well, no, I don't think it would. I think the intent was to give the enforcement agent the ability to enforce these specific things that we've run into. And that's, again, to restate it, that individual has the authority based on town ordinances, not state law. And that's where the separation is. We can't enforce state law with the town staff person. Okay, we can enforce town ordinances with town staff. Does that make sense?
Ms. Nell, do you feel that the ordinances as presented will help you in your job duties? Okay.
Ms. Buckman? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I have a couple things to talk about, and so I think what Joe and I and a lot of the community members, it's the spirit of the law. It's the job is to keep people safe and happy in their well-being, not to hassle people and to target them. So as long as the spirit of the law is being used and you're not targeting people, then, right?
Yeah, I mean, to an extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, it's.
I will speak.
I don't know if everybody's going to read these anyway. Here we are discussing these tonight. And not everybody might, you know, they're not going to sit and read them. It just is. Someone's knocking at their door. Hey, you're too close to the stop sign. Well, I've always parked there. Well, you can't.
Well, it's always been in your ordinance that you can't park 20 feet from an intersection, and every intersection has a stop sign anyway. So all you've essentially done is broken it out to a stop sign, and you're adding 5 feet. As far as the targeting, I will go for Miss Nail. She goes above and beyond and knocks on people's doors before she even issues tickets the majority of the time.
I know you do. I know you do.
So no, I mean, these ordinances aren't done to target or to punish people. It's to keep people safe, to be able to handle the complaints that come in, because we do get complaints, and if it's not in the code, there's nothing that we can do about it, even though I know that we should, but we can't. So that's what we've tried to do with this, to make things safer and to be able to address concerns of the community that have been brought to our attention.
Ms. Buckman?
Okay, so on page 24 of 48, number, well, I don't actually know what number two, maybe it's a new number. Some of our businesses during their busiest times of the year would love to reserve and still pay the daily fee for reserving a meter. But to be able to, because they're so exorbitantly busy, they can't keep running to the office every day, that they can reserve it for an extended period of time. And I don't know what that extended period of time is. This person would like it for tax season, but even if it's just a 2-week period at a time, would be helpful. And we'd still be getting the reservation fee for each day. They have a lot of elderly clients. I have a letter from them. I don't know if we can look at that. Do you want?
Yeah, I'll take one. And ultimately, that's a decision for you as the board.
And I would,
Thing that, keep and consider. Is that you're taking away parking from other people that.
so it's only
would
during
want-
business hours, and it's because many of her clients are very elderly.
I mean, right now, yeah, I mean, that's something for the board to discuss and make a recommendation on. Right now, it says a maximum of 3 days.
Do we know of other municipalities who do this? Are you aware of anybody else who does this?
I'm just speaking up as
Sure.
citizens advisor.
Okay, this is from the Citizens Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, it's not from the Citizens Advisory Committee, but being the person of contact that, hears people and brings it to the Citizens Advisory. We have our meeting this week or whatever,
Okay.
coming up soon.
Have they, so they haven't weighed in on this?
No.
No, not yet. Okay.
To me, it seems reasonable as long as, it's during business hours, it's not 24 hours a day. You know what I mean?
I mean, you'd want to address how many parking spots are you going to allow
Right. Does
one
she
person to
mention
take up, because you would be
I
taking
think
away.
she just would request one during tax season.
That's like January to April. We can.
It's just, a lot of her clients are disabled.
If they put the placard up, they can park anywhere they want and not have a charge.
Well, not everyone has a placard, yeah. And you could, would you like a copy of the letter?
I've got an
to-
extra one. I will give her one.
Okay.
We can have staff. I'll have staff looking to see if any other municipalities look and see what else.
That
if
would
you
that would be
like.
good. Yeah, I
Okay.
think that would be a good direction. The other concern related to this is not just one business for their specific reasons, but all businesses. I mean, it has to be the pattern. It has to be a template that everybody would have access to it.
But you could
And-
still, she could still run here every 3 days and reserve it. There's no limit to how many times she can reserve
Well,
it. She just.
no, I'm not talking about this specific business. I'm talking about all
All the
businesses
business.
on
Yeah,
Main
include
Street.
all
That's
of
for
it. It's
everyone.
not just for one. It's
Right.
for
It would
everyone.
have to be for everybody.
Right.
But
You would
we-
have
we-
to set. You would have to set a maximum amount of time on it because you couldn't have one business reserving one spot for eternity.
So
you
is
know.
that in the code that you could only do it for upwards of 3 reservations
3
in a
days.
row? Mm-hmm. Not 3 days. I can come in here, I could walk to this office every 3 days and reserve it for 3 more days indefinitely.
Yeah,
She
that's not
just-
in the
she-
policy, and it should be, because you shouldn't be able to reserve one spot for an infinite amount of time.
I don't know that that's true.
Well, the other part is if you have two businesses involved in the same business, they're in competition with one another. So it would be sort of open-ended for access to fair market.
We do that now.
I mean, with the limited
So,
parking.
but I'm trying to keep it very general, though. I mean,
Yeah, but
that's,
we do that now. You can buy a 6-month pass and park in that same spot every day.
you could, sure.
Oh.
But it's not a single reserved spot, though, and that's what they're looking for.
Right.
That's what I think the difference is. So could town staff look into what other towns are doing
Yes.
related to reserving single spaces in this type of a context
Yes.
for a business? Would
Yes.
that be enough for your
That's
needs right now?
fine, and even
Okay.
if we were just to give a little bit to help out, this is one of our nice business people in town. They're all we love, we want to support our businesses, even if it's a week at a time.
We
Just
do
to
that.
yield a little bit more. It's 3 days, every 3 days.
No, we do have a reserved spot for business hours. There's only one place in town, that's the Dr. Curley's office. Has a one reserved black thing there for business hours only.
Need a meter, but they can, yeah, that's for the patients.
I remember a little sign on it, and I couldn't remember what it said, but
Yeah.
I thought it said just for business hours only.
It's actually for patients,
Patients parking only.
doctors' patients. But I guess
No one else can park there, only if you're in a doctor's, going to the doctor's office. Or a business. That's one of the-
Okay, so there's that, and then on page 26 of 48, does this ordinance allow for people to use Uber or Lyft as well as provide this service? Because if we're being modern, that's a modern thing.
What? How would that fit in here?
I don't know,
I don't
It
understand.
wouldn't. I mean,
you're noting all the different types of,
but an Uber or Lyft isn't a specific type of vehicle. It's a service. So they would. I mean, an Uber and Lyft still has to follow all the codes and laws and state laws and county and town codes.
okay,
It's not a distinction. It's just a service. It's not a type of vehicle.
okay.
They use their
And we
own
do
meter.
have Lyfts and Ubers
Right.
that do come to Emmitsburg, and yeah.
So when we look at page 26 of 48, I'm looking at letter B, and we do talk about a specific vehicle type. It's also a specific use. Is that
You're
where
talking
you're
about
coming
a
from?
vehicle
Like
type,
taxi
not a
cab?
use.
Okay. Well, for taxi cab, we have the use.
Right. Ubers and Lyfts aren't taxi cabs, though. They're not metered.
But is that what you're looking for?
Is that what
Yeah, I
you're-
was just wondering,
But how do you want them, I mean, if you wanted them included, to what end are you trying to?
well, I was
What's
thinking if
your
we
goal
were
in including them?
defining all different types of vehicles and their usage, I was just,
That's a
if we're
type.
updating it. if
Yeah, these definitions are types of vehicles. So, a bus is different than a motor is
Right,
different
right.
than a motorcycle. It's different than a passenger vehicle. Your Uber or your Lyft is going to either be your motor vehicle, it's going to be a passenger car,
Okay.
or a truck. It's not its own distinction.
Okay. And then I was just out of
Yes.
curiosity, as the wisdom on the bottom of page 32, it says, "No other signals or standard designated areas where parking is not allowed shall be erect without the express authority of the Board of Commissioners." Why is that necessary to even mention the Board of Commissioners there?
I don't know, that's an old code that I didn't add that. Town may establish restricted areas, you're talking about 040?
Yes.
No parking areas. Town may establish restricted areas on such portions of streets of the town.
That gives us the authority to do this.
Right,
That's all that is.
It does not give us authority.
it does.
No, it does.
It does.
Oh, I
We
see,
can't,
okay.
the town staff can't make any changes without the
Okay,
authority of the board.
That empowers
Right.
this body.
Okay, I was reading it differently.
Nope, no, we're good.
All right, and I think that is, oh, and then the other thing, like, if someone's parked in one spot for 24 hours,
48.
or every 24 hours, the left side, okay, 48 hours, obviously, we're not, if someone's hospitalized, we're gonna check on them, right? Yeah, I know, I just don't, okay. I know you do, you're wonderful, no one ever complains about you.
But she's very thorough.
Okay, so, are you good so far? Okay, Commissioner Sweeney, anything?
No.
Okay, one item, actually two items. One's on page 30 of 48. And actually, we read this. I'm looking at item number 3. I'm looking at the sentence beginning with the word, wait, no, it's all caps, so that's not the sentence. Okay. Partially into the roadway. Vehicles must not extend, should we say, beyond the property line of the driveway into the roadway?
Yes.
Do we want to
Yeah,
add beyond
correct.
there? Okay, all right.
Yes.
So that's one thing, and I don't mean to complicate our enforcement officer's life. I don't know if we do this as a policy. I know it's done in Frederick City, where when a vehicle is in violation of whatever, photographs are taken to identify that violation.
She takes photographs on, anything out of the ordinary, not an expired
Terrific.
meter.
Okay.
But anything out of the ordinary, something like number 3, she
Okay.
would take a photograph of.
Perfect, okay.
Anything that we might anticipate would go further, she
Correct.
takes pictures of.
Okay. And that's helped, I hope? I mean,
Yes,
when questions
yes.
have come forward? Great, okay, good.
Yes.
Okay. Beyond that, any other comments or considerations from the board at this time? Nothing? No? Okay. So direction related to reviewing other towns' actions related to a business requesting for a reserve
Yes.
space, and I think that's it for us.
And then some other, the changes that were, little modifications that were recommended, we'll put
Semantic
those
items.
as well. And then I'll have staff look into this other request from Commissioner Buckman.
Great, okay. All right, at this time, are we ready to move forward to the next agenda item? Okay, so with that in mind, let's move to the next agenda item related to home sharing, transient homes, however you want to phrase it. Okay, and this is a presentation by town staff on short-term transient rentals. Okay. Do we need the overhead? Okay, do you want lights off, folks?
Just this one.
Terrific, okay, thank you.
Mr. Martha already said that she would do this if it's something we chose to do.
Okay, let me read this, but not right now.
No,
because-
of course
okay.
not right now. I
Okay.
want you to have.
Can I hold on to one?
Yeah.
Okay, great,
Hand it to the other guys too.
sure.
Bring it up in the future.
We all ready? Over there.
So everybody knows.
Give it to her earlier in the day, Maddie.
No, I mean, for the board to get that. Okay.
Ready?
Staff's ready? Thank you.
I guess we're ready. You can hear me now?
Yes, definitely better.
I think I'm going to look at the volume on this setting on that machine too. Okay, short-term transient rentals. As something that the Planning Commission has been considering since last October at the request of the mayor. And this PowerPoint is something I developed after doing some online webinars about the topic. It's really become kind of an issue in a lot of different communities. I guess New York City, is the worst place, I guess, for trying to deal with it. So a lot of this PowerPoint came from the webinar online, which discussed sort of the basic sort of advantages and disadvantages of and how to fit this into your community. So we have traditional lodging options like hotels, motels, and inns, or bed and breakfast, boarding house, tourist home. We have these in our code, and they are really considered a commercial enterprise. And what do they have in common? A short-term stay, on-site manager or owner. They're also subject to inspections, regulations, sometimes a lodging tax, and they rent to complete strangers. It's not like the hotel is having their friends come over. It's people who are completely unknown. So our ordinance kind of addresses this type of accommodations. Newer concepts are these short-term rentals or vacation rentals that are happening in private homes or apartments or in buildings that are not approved as hotels, motels, inns, or boarding houses. Common characteristics of these are marketing and reservations via social media sites like Airbnb, HomeAway, TripAdvisor. There's a lot of them where you can go on there and find somebody who is either renting anything from a couch in their apartment to one bedroom in their house to, more, or sometimes it's the entire house. Again, it's renting to complete strangers. And often there's no owner or manager present to provide supervision, so no one is responsible for the renter's behavior or their safety. And there are no health or safety inspections. Public concerns have been the neighborhood character. If you have transient use in a non-commercial setting, like in one of our subdivisions, that can lead to commercializations of residential districts. There's often a reduction of neighborhood cohesion because you don't know your neighbor, because it could be somebody different every 2 days. And so it leads to a less, as I said, cohesive neighborhood. And it could have a possible impact on property values. Safety, increased number of strangers in the neighborhood on a random short-term basis. In my neighborhood in Gettysburg, somebody was trying to do this on one side of a duplex with little kids on the other side of the wall, and they ended up not being able to do it because it wasn't zoned. But you never know who's going to be on the other side of that duplex. In apartment buildings, you can have security concerns in general of who's coming in the building, and if there's common areas, does this person who we've just said is a complete stranger, are they allowed in the common areas? Noise and other annoyances, late night activity, litter, property damage, potentially parking overload if you don't have parking on your own property. party houses. There was a story in the news in the last couple of weeks about a house, can't remember where, but it was $20,000 of damage was done to a woman's house because she rented it out and people had a party. And the place that she marketed it through gave her $3,200 in claims. Other issues, sometimes there's fraudulent listings, like they misrepresent the property, like waterfront, and it's not, or it has the quality of it, or so that can happen. And also you can have unfair competition with your existing hotels and B&Bs and other legal short-term rentals. Because you're competing with them, but you don't have to go through, you have not gone through the permitting and inspections and had to invest in your property the way they did. Unregulated competition can also reduce the number of service jobs. Building, health, safety, fire, and ADA requirements that apply to hotels and licensed accommodations and the safety of the visitors. And in our situation, this is something that Frederick County would be looking at. Short-term rentals remove units from the long-term housing stock because people find they can make as much or more, usually more, money renting something on a daily basis than they could on a long-term rental. And there's no public notice that this activity is proposed or that it's taking place. And this can cause hostility between neighbors, especially if you're tenants, if you're not on the premises while these people are renting. It can, they can end up on the neighbor's property or being noisy. So it can get a little testy. The bottom line is it can be like having a mini hotel in your neighborhood. The property owner benefits financially because, especially where they live on site, it can help them pay their mortgage or pay their rent, especially in higher cost places where the housing costs more. So it can benefit people, but for a neighborhood, it can also be a disbenefit. So some type of controls appear to be needed. And both I and the Planning Commission did some research. There's a few different ways people, and it sort of depends on how much of this there is. For instance, at Ocean City, they've got a whole thing. It's more of a vacation situation. But if the town government here decides they want to allow short-term transient rentals, you can do it by zoning. You could allow this type of use as an accessory use, but have a conditional use approval from the Planning Commission or a special exception by the Board of Appeals with specified requirements such as liability insurance that goes beyond your homeowner's insurance, your normal homeowner's insurance. If somebody got hurt, you're going to be liable for it. Show that there's adequate on-site parking that meets the code requirements, and that there's an on-site manager or owner present during the rental period. Some places, their code says you can have a manager that is available 24/7, and everybody within 400 feet has their phone number and can call them any time of the day or night. There's different ways of doing it. And you can limit the number of rooms rented, the percent of a building rented on this basis. An example was Portland, Oregon. What they did was rental of 2 bedrooms or fewer requires a short-term rental permit. 3 to 5 bedrooms and requires a conditional use review by the Planning Commission. Greater than 5 bedrooms is not considered an accessory residential use, but a commercial use. That's Portland, Oregon. We looked at other ordinances in Maryland and some other states. Some of them do licensing. To put the short-term rentals on the same level as a B&B or a hotel, it treats the short-term rental as a commercial use, subject to inspections, and you can limit the length of stay, like not less than 2 days, or you need to define what is a short-term rental. Is it 30 days or less? They can be fined for operating without a permit or license. Again, the insurance, number of rooms, and have an annual renewal. And this, if you were going to do this, would require staff or outside firm to monitor the listings online and inspect the units. Another thing about the listings, I've noticed the ones I've looked at, they don't put the address on them. So it's not always possible to know. I mean, it says Emmitsburg, but it could be in the zip code. So I know there are some in Emmitsburg, but I'm not sure because I don't know what everybody's house looks like inside. So the efforts to date, Mayor Briggs asked the Planning Commission to take a look at the issues in the fall of 2017. So I did this PowerPoint at their October meeting. And we had some related handouts and had an initial discussion. At the January 29th meeting, this topic was not on the agenda, but we had a brief discussion because people came for public comment thinking that it was on the agenda. At the February 26th meeting, we had further discussion and an attempt to figure out, I made a chart and I said, here's all the different zoning designations we have in town that allow, other than industrial. But, so we started this chart and all the different kinds of short-term rentals you could have, like in an apartment building. Would you like each tenant to be able to rent out their couch? Or should it only be that the owner can rent something out on this basis? It's kind of a complicated topic. So the planning members believe that to go to this effort was not useful because short-term rentals are not currently allowed in the code as an accessory use. So they figured they should wait until they get direction from the board that you wanted to pursue this. They did agree that all the rental units in the town should be registered so the town has knowledge of their location and how many there are, whether it's short-term or long-term. Because right now, we have no idea. I mean, until we get a complaint or somebody comes in for a permit, we don't know, maybe through the water billing system, but we don't have a comprehensive list of which buildings are rentals. And the things between the presentation I did and the discussion we had, there may be a need to review and update the definitions for the hotel, motel, inn, and the commercial entities. We need to decide, you need to decide whether short-term rentals will be allowed in residentially or mixed-use areas, whether you would want to require an owner or manager to live in the building and be present when the rentals take place. And we did research and review how other municipalities are handling this issue. And then the next step would be to develop a draft ordinance if the mayor and board request one. And we would need to get public input via the ordinance process. So questions?
You put a lot of effort into this. I commend you for that.
Well, thank you.
The one thing that I want to kind of, you pointed out some of the safety concerns, but I'll have to tell you, when I moved to Emmitsburg and I looked up, sexual predators, they were all over town, and also college students' parties. So I don't know that we can consider those things prior to doing something like this. We deal with it if there's a problem. We can't foresee anything that could possibly go wrong. And that I also want to say that Emmitsburg is a pilgrimage site for many Christians. They come from around the world here. And so we don't really have, especially during winter months, enough hotels and that sort of thing. So it does fill a void. That wasn't considered in all of this. So we have a huge population of people coming from the Philippines to visit Emmitsburg. There's a lot of different needs that we have in our town that we can't fulfill. I think that it's a good idea to, put some parameters on it. But I'm not opposed to the idea of, no one wants anyone else's rights to be infringed upon, and you deal with things as that happens. People's, have the right for their property as long as they're not infringing on other people's rights. So I don't know if anyone else has any.
And frankly, that point that you just made was exactly what one of the planning commission members said at one of their meetings. John Howard, I believe it was, said, it's a matter of the right for you to do what you want with your property, but it's also the right of your neighbors to enjoy their property.
Right.
So it's what you just said.
Right. You're assuming that you're infringing on someone's rights. I mean, I'm not thinking the worst case scenario, because I never do that, because that's too extreme. But if it's the place is safe and it's insured and it's managed.
Let me jump in for a second.
Yeah.
Do you have a question for the planner? Because what I'd like to do is get public comment if we don't
Okay,
have
go
board
ahead.
questions.
No, I don't have.
Do we have any questions for the planner?
Not at this time.
Not at this time. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call up the one person who signed up for it, Maria Henry. Good evening.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. Yes, there was a lot of effort put in here, but they're all the worst scenarios that you can possibly find.
Focus to the board, if you
Yeah.
would. Ms. Henry, I'm going to ask you to do a couple things. Please introduce yourself. Please give us your residence. And when you have questions or you're addressing the topic, please address the board, not staff. And that way,
Okay.
we'll carry your questions forward through the evening.
My name is Maria Henry, and I own the house on 113 East Main Street. And, okay, should I continue?
Yes, please do.
All right. So, so all the scenarios are like the worst scenarios that could possibly happen. And I'm here tonight because I thought maybe in the past 2 months, something positive will be, will have happened. A lot of the things like in short-term rentals that are not necessarily any of those things, that are probably been happening here for a long time. And if the staff have not had any complaint, it's because things go pretty smooth, Now, you cannot be a mini hotel because there's not such a thing of mini. You either are a hotel or not. And you're a hotel, when you are 10 bedrooms, they have 10 bathrooms, meaning each bedroom a bathroom. And you have to have 10 available rooms at least. Okay, so the short-term let's say Airbnb is a website that first of all insure you. It's a $1 million insurance through Airbnb of anyone that comes, let's say, to my house or to whoever it's going through their website. The other thing that they do for you is that the person that they are sending to your house is a person that has already been, they have recommendations. There have been somewhere else, and they have been recommended, you know, and then it's up to you. And if that person have not been anywhere else and have no recommendations, then it's up to you to take them or not, okay? But most of the time, because Airbnb is insuring the people that are coming to the house, they are recommended. You know, they've been somewhere else. So these are people that, common sense is that if it's your own house, you don't want to trash it, you know? So, you don't ever overbook the house. You know, you don't, at least my house, I wouldn't give it to any party animals that are going to be like you know, messing up my house or anything like that. I have 6 bedrooms, which maybe only 4 of them I have used in the past for Airbnb, okay? And occasionally I had more than that, but they were family with their own, you know, their children or something that were here for maybe for a wedding that it was happening at St. Joseph or something overnight and things like that. You know, never any disturbance. My neighbor, or been the same neighbor since 1996 when I moved to Emmitsburg, and they never ever have any complaint, you know, to me, you know, of me. And I keep my house, if you go down the street, I will say, it's not because it's my house, I always keep my house clean, painted, nice, always look, you know, very good. And there's no complaints about my neighbors having any noise or anything like that, because the truth with Airbnb is that our homeowners that are not necessarily ones that place trash or rent it to anyone else. And they are, like I say, already have insurance and have, you know, people that have been recommended through other people. When you go through all the scenarios that Ms. Cypri have mentioned, they truly are like almost like a low-life description of someone that was going rent a couch or like something like that, which is like, you know, and here in Emmitsburg, if you have, I used to work for FEMA there, and we have 400 people every 2 weeks. They come, they're perfectly strangers. They come to this town, you know. We have a lot of strange people that just walk the town with absolutely, you know, we don't know. In the back of my house, I have a whole business, there's a whole building that is subsidized. And every so often we have people that are coming from Frederick that we don't know, and a lot of them have records and things like that, and, you know. So the thing of it is like people protect their home. I don't, and every time I come and I talk about this, the staff always mention this kind of places where are real big and then they have problems, and New York and, you know, Ocean City and all these other things, and we lack into to make something that is reasonable for Emmitsburg, for the town of Emmitsburg, with a little over 2,000 people, and who we are and all that should be part of the common sense thing that we come in together to put together. It's not, you know, it's difficult. I
want to throw in here, our timer isn't functioning at the moment, so I want to ask you if you can take 2 more minutes to conclude. Is that okay? Sure.
I'm, you know, my conclusion is like, I'm here 2 months after the you know, that I wanted to like, and I'm coming over here tonight to see what we have done. And, what good news do I have or anything like that? Not just for me, but for anyone else that might be wanting to do short-term rentals. And really, we continue to look beyond what we can do in Emmitsburg and comparing Emmitsburg with New York, Ocean City, and all these other things, and also going through to the scenarios that are like the worst that could happen. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let me take it.
You want to mention that one?
Okay. Mr. Ritz, do you want to
Well,
begin?
what's the direction we're going tonight when it's all said and done?
Well, it's a discussion item tonight.
Okay.
Staff would be looking for a direction from the board, possibly related to this.
Okay.
And direction-wise, most specifically would be, do we want to direct staff to shut down any possible, short-term rentals? Do we want staff to give attention to creating a process to permit them, like the actual document, a permit, to permit them? Or do we want to let it remain status quo where it's sort of, where it is an unregulated source of income for folks in the community? So I think I'm framing it with broad brushstrokes in
Okay.
those three categories. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. I guess one way to look at the entire situation, even though they're apples and oranges, is the fact that we do have many houses in town that are rented out to Mount St. Mary's college students. Said owners of the house don't even live in town. For example, right next door to me, the owner of the house lives in New Jersey. He doesn't know what goes on in that house. We lucked out this semester, or this calendar year. No issues. First 2 years were terrible. Every year he'd come over the summer before school started, and he had to paint the entire house because it was trashed at all times. Now, I'm not trying to liken this to Miss Henry's situation or Airbnb, but I'm just saying that the college house rentals in town aren't regulated. I know we're working with Mount St. Mary's. It's nothing official yet, but
the Mount knows where all their students live. So as for where the Mount students are, so they know who's in each rental. We don't know it, but they know. So the people that are staying there, at least it's known, and it's for a longer period of time.
okay.
But I do see what you're saying, but
I also see individuals that come over to the house because they know other individuals in the house, and they're staying there, and I
Right.
bet you they're not on any list.
But that can be anywhere that there's a rental, and I think that's why there's the recommendation. I'll let you finish, but that's why the recommendation to register some of these rental properties, or all the rental properties.
And again, I'm all for promoting business in town. If somebody has a house that they would like to let out rooms, I see that as a source of business. I guess I am a little concerned at maybe using this type of business entity outside of the village zone. I don't know if that's something we want to consider. Within the village zone, though, of course, if you live within the village zone, you know full well that you're in a commercial district. You could be next to a business. Most businesses are open regular business hours. It's not all hours of the night. We don't know if there'll be noise ordinances with someone staying at these Airbnbs. And actually, Miss Henry, I think, made a comment about the couch. Somebody said something about a couch, and I did research on it, and I think that's how it all started. It was a couple in California, and it was an air mattress. That's how it all started. So,
Right. This is not a unique problem. If you look at any of the MML bulletins that are being sent, it's a problem that the state of Maryland across the board is trying to figure out on how to deal with it.
I think
And let me finish though. Lose my train of thought. Bed and breakfast. I stayed at bed and breakfast once with my wife, and I'm pretty confident that the house, the owner, wasn't there at night. You know, it was a house that they own. It was they left stuff out in the kitchen. I think I'm trying to remember. It was like a.
Where are we going, Mr. Ritz? Yeah, be worried.
No, but they own the house.
Right.
It was their business. It was a bed and breakfast. They went away. They lived in another location. They came back for morning time and made sure they got breakfast and stuff ready, but it's like they weren't there all night. Granted, we were only there one night, but I don't know. It is a unique situation. I'm kind of opposed to writing a whole new ordinance just to satisfy this. I'm almost looking at it to modify something existing. That's my take on it.
Ms. Buckman?
I think that I'm not objecting to. I'm glad that we're talking about officiating this and not just, you know, that if we put reasonable parameters, that it's registered, that, well, it already provides insurance, that the house is safe. I mean, anytime you rent out, you have to make sure there's smoke detectors and fire extinguishers, and that the owner is accessible if there's a problem with the police or the neighbors, that they're accessible. That's reasonable. I think that property rights in America are very important. It's what our country is founded on. The idea of owning a piece of property and that being your right as long as you're not infringing on other people's rights. And I feel like those are getting taken away from us slowly, not in Emmitsburg, in our country. That we should, you know, consider preserving people's property rights as long as they're not infringing on other people. We're American. That's an American thing.
Okay, Mr. Sweeney?
I don't know how we would regulate it or go and find out who all rents here and who all rents here, and how would you know what's rented and what ain't? It'd be so hard to keep track of.
We'd have good faith that someone would register it. I don't know who's renting their sofa out in Emmitsburg.
Me neither.
I mean, we're not going to know. But if someone wants to be legit, you know, you assume they're going to follow. I mean, I'm not going to assume everyone's a criminal. I'm going to assume they're going to make a good faith. And if they're offending other people's rights, then you deal with that.
I don't think we should write a whole new ordinance. I'm with Joe. I think we just should
I agree.
modify an ordinance that we already have.
Right.
Is there any specific modification you'd be interested in seeing?
Altering the bed and breakfast ordinances a little, or
Or would you want more time?
I guess
don't mean to
it's
put
the
you on.
zoning ordinance of the village zone.
And say whether it
Mr. Sweeney, if you don't have something in mind right now, I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to
Well,
see where we are.
the planning and zoning, when we talked about it, we would like to have somebody, either a manager on site during the daytime, or somebody who lived, the owner being on site, somebody to manage it during the daytime, or somebody had to be there at all times and could be contacted within 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. That was brought up. And,
I think that's a good parameter.
Permit?
I don't know what else to do in the bed and breakfast because I've never stayed in them.
Would you want to see a permit or anything like that? Any board member interested in seeing a
I
permit?
think they should register. I mean, all rentals should register.
Okay.
If we're treating it as it's a business, I view it as a business. So, you know, if you have a business in town, don't you have to have some sort of permit, right? Okay.
It
I'm
would be
renting out
nice
a room
if
in my
it,
house. Do I need a permit?
What?
If a person is doing that, I think there would be consideration for it. I think that's what the board, so far what we're hearing from the board.
It's And I'm assuming all of these instances, and Miss Henry's would be a advertised business. You know, you go to the website. There's your house.
Yeah, it's not, it wouldn't be my advertised, it would be through, that's why it's through a website that insures you.
Ms. Henry, I'm going to ask you to come up to the podium. Your name was used, so you're
Sorry, I called you out.
entitled to another
You might want to stay up there.
5 minutes for a response.
Yeah. So that,
Is it 4? 4, I'm sorry.
It's It's all, there's no advertising, there's no signs on the street, there is none of that. Okay? The people come through this website that people know to go to, like Airbnb or HomeAway or, one of those. And then, like I was explaining, these people are sent to you and they say, there is a family of 3 or 4, that wants to stay over your house for this day and that day, for 2 days. And you either accept that or not. You see their past reference, and then, you agree to that or not.
So they don't advertise your home on the
But
B&B?
Yes, you advertise, so you register. Let's say I register my house through them. There's no, and then it comes through them. They advertise. I wouldn't advertise. I don't need to have anything, any signs in the house, nothing that says that I'm a Airbnb or anything like that.
There's photos. I remember seeing there's like photos of your house. I think there was photos of the room. So let's say somebody's on there and
the house is up for sale. So what you're saying is
that was a
sign
that was a couple months ago. But I remember. So
the photos are because I was an Airbnb and to come back a little bit, from the very beginning when we were talking about safety, I was the one who first came to this town office.
Right.
When absolutely nobody else have come here before, and some people might say, well, you're dumb, why did you go, because I wanted to be safe. I wanted my house to be safe. And actually, I was looking forward to have someone come to my house and see that I have smoke detectors, that I have fire extinguisher in every floor of the house, and that I was like safe, and that I have a good entrance, that I have 5 parking spaces in the back, and all of these things. And then everything backfired because I wanted to make sure that I had that. And and then it just then I was threatened by the town staff that the planner, that if I don't shut down, she was going to fine me $100 a day. And this is without having any if there's no law, I wasn't even violating the law, because if the law doesn't exist, what law are you violating? And of course, and to answer your question again, Mr. Ritz, also and everybody, I wouldn't want my house trash, okay? And I would want my house to be safe. So my phone number and everything, it's managed through me all the time. If I happen not to be in my house, I'm available 24 hours if anybody wants to call me for whatever circumstance that might occur or might have, But so all that is, it was something that I was actually looking for the town direction.
Okay.
So once you click the OK button, someone's interested in staying at your place. You look at their whatever's presented through the app, website, whatever it is. You click OK, then that's when they get the information. Oh, hey, by the way, okay, here's my house. It's officially located at 113 East Main Street.
Excuse me. You go to Emmitsburg and you say you want to be in Emmitsburg somewhere, and my house will pop up in one of these.
Sorry.
We had another, no, keep going. We had another
Yeah.
question asked directly, so.
So if you wanted to stay in Emmitsburg, my house will be, let's say, among whatever other houses, but will come up, and then you're able to see all the rooms that are available and where the house is located and all that. And also it will be a little bit about myself, who I am, where I work, things like that, just like a profile of myself. my family. You know, because on the other side, the people want to be in a safe home too. You know, I want to go to a bed and breakfast that is not like someone, you know, trashy or whatever, or unsafe.